if the most valuable AI in your business isn't the one that's just writing text, but the one that's predicting tomorrow's reality? Well, today I'm joined by Zohar Bronfman, CEO and co-founder of Pecan AI. And he will argue today that while many leaders chase those shiny demos, the real return on investment is actually hiding in plain sight, right inside your data. And my guest story starts with one of curiosity and a simple question. If predictive AI is so powerful, why isn't everyone using it? And the answer points to scarcity of skills, long queues for data scientists, and projects that stall before they never even reach the front line. But his response was to put forecasting, churn prediction, fraud detection, and demand planning right into the hands of the people that are closest to this work. So today we're going to talk about why so many enterprise Gen AI pilots stutter, and why a recent MIT study found eye-watering failure rates for ROI. But on the flip side of all this, how predictive models built on your proprietary data change the conversation from what happened to what will happen. And he will also share how teams that have never touched a line of machine learning code before can still build useful models, plus wash it all down with a very real-world example from Little Spoon that will show how early churn prediction can turn into measurable retention. And yeah, we'll also get practical about the 2 steps that cut failure risk dramatically. I'll give you a few spoilers here. Define the problem first, and then align a cross-functional team that owns the outcome of that. So if AI is going to become core infrastructure, it has to live where decisions are made. So are you ready to rethink what AI is for? If so, you're going to love this one. So let me introduce you to my guest today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Zohar Bronfman. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Pecan AI. I've been doing that in the last 7 years. Before that, I come from academia. I did a dual PhD in Tel Aviv University, one in computational neuroscience and the other one in philosophy of AI.
And I've got to ask, what was it that originally inspired you to start Pecan AI? And how has that mission evolved since then? There's got to be some kind of origin story there, right? Tell me more about that.
I think like every good story, it starts with curiosity. And the big question that struck my co-founder Noam and myself was, AI is so amazing, specifically the domain of predictive AI, where you can actually take historical data and ask something about the future, is fascinating. When you think about it, it's a superpower that once you possess it, you can't even imagine how you lived without it. Knowing the future, who would have imagined? And when we first met that capability, we literally, out of curiosity, we asked ourselves, why aren't everyone, but I mean everyone, are just using predictive AI all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And, we went on a research and tried to understand why are companies not doing predictive AI? What's keeping them back? And we found a couple of very interesting reasons for them not to be doing it. But mainly the reason was while predictive AI is super, super interesting, is extremely hard. You'd have to be what's called a data scientist. So someone who has the experience and knowledge and coding capabilities and statistical background. And these individuals are quite rare. And if they're available, they'll go and work usually for a bigger company that can afford a bigger paycheck. And the smaller and mid-sized companies are left off usually with a scarce resource when it comes to AI and especially predictive AI. So it's mostly a talent gap.
That's such a great story. And one of the things that attracted me to you when I was reading about you is that you've argued that most companies are currently or have been distracted by LLMs. And we've been, nearly 3 years since ChatGPT first dropped. So I think that's such a great point. So why do you think that predictive AI is the bigger opportunity right now that many are overlooking? Tell me more about them.
I'm not trying to say that generative AI and LLMs have no value whatsoever.
Yeah.
I am arguing quite confidently that there is a bigger gap than we'd like to admit between how much effort and money is being invested on the business and enterprise side of things in generative AI and how much real return on investment companies are seeing. The reason being is that while consumer and prosumers, which were the main audience of Gen AI and LLMs, are seeing a lot of value in this tool that helps them create artifacts or summarize knowledge sources. For the enterprise, the biggest asset is optimization of processes and leveraging of data. Gen AI and LLMs are not reliable enough to be serving as an anchor for these types of functions like optimizing business processes or leveraging the business proprietary data. It ends up being potentially more of a concern than a real source of value in many cases. And there's a recent study, mind-blowing study coming out of MIT showing that 90 to 95% of Gen AI initiatives ended up failing, returning no value, not even half of the investment, no value. And in marked contrast, when you look at predictive AI, it's just an infinite source of enterprise value because predictive AI takes your business data and it builds a model that is based on your proprietary data, and it leverages that data to give you unique, tailor-made answers to questions that are of interest to your business. So you can basically sit and ask something like, hey, out of all of my existing customers, which are the ones that are going to spend the most money with me next month so that I can give them another offer? Or out of all of my existing customers, who's most likely to churn so that I can do some kind of a retention effort? Or what's my expected sales next quarter? Or how much goods am I going to sell in that specific branch? Or is this transaction fraudulent? Any question that is based on your historical data and can be projected to the future can be answered by predictive AI. So to me, it's not even a fair fight.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that there, because I think over the last few years, there's been a lot of businesses jumping on the Gen AI bandwagon, distracted by the shiny technology and the promises, but not thinking about, hey, what problem are we solving? What are we improving here? And as a result, like you said there was 95% have got no ROI, no measurable difference. But on the flip side of this, I'd love to offer everybody listening a different side of that story. And can you expand on how putting predictive analysis directly into the hands of business teams, how that changes decision making compared to maybe traditional data science setups? Because it's a completely different story here, isn't it?
Absolutely. You will see a lot of misunderstanding of what AI can and can't do. That's something that I think I've mentioned it, but I just want to double click on that for just 1 second.
Yeah.
Pecan helps companies that have no AI expertise and no data science capabilities to basically build predictive models right off the bat. So in our business, we meet hundreds of organizations every month, and we hear about what they think AI can and can't do. I can tell you that in the vast majority of cases, people have misconception. They don't entirely understand the limits of what AI can do. So I want to put the first thing right up front of all of us. AI cannot replace people, full stop. I haven't seen one decent example of an AI that is replacing a person. Mm-hmm. The only examples I'm familiar with after so many years in academia and in industry, AI enhances people's capabilities. It can help you become more efficient, meaning you take some processes that you're already doing and it makes it easier and faster for you. And it can help you become more effective in the sense that it can help you achieve something that you weren't able to achieve before. I'll give you one example for each, if that makes sense. So on the efficiency side, it's quite straightforward, and Gen AI is a great efficiency booster. Let's say I'm a marketer. Let's say I like writing content for my SEO so that I can help drive some traffic to the website. ChatGPT is a great way to start some content piece. You'll have to fix it. You'll have to amend it. You can't let ChatGPT or any other Gen AI out there to own the entire content strategy and all the content pieces end to end without human involvement. It won't work. It would fail miserably. But you can definitely have it as an efficiency booster. Instead of spending 5 hours on a piece of content, it can help you spend only 1 hour. Amazing value. That's the efficiency play. The effectiveness play is where I achieve something I wasn't able to do prior. As an example, I'll give you 2 examples. One, let's say myself, I'm very bad when it comes to aesthetics. I'm very bad at designing things. Historically, if I wanted to pull up some kind of a nice short video, I had to send it to a designer or to an agency and ask them, can you make this video look better so that I can use it? Gen AI now provides me with a capability of making that video where I couldn't have done it before. So that's not an efficiency play per se. It makes me more effective as a contributor, as a person. I argue that the biggest play of effectiveness comes when you, as a contributor within your organization, are able to achieve new capabilities. And in our specific case, for Pecan at least, we are taking personas who have never built any type of a predictive model in their life before. And all of a sudden, we help them build those models, and de facto, they become data scientists, just like the designer I became in the story before.
And just to bring to life some of what we're talking about here, could you possibly walk me through, I don't know, a real world example of why it stands out as a proof point here? And before you came on the podcast, one story that stood out to me was that of Little Spoon. I'm not sure if you're able to share that with everyone listening, but a great example, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Little Spoon will just be one example, obviously, of a customer that was gracious enough to agree that we tell their story, obviously without going into any confidential details. Little Spoon is a great company that does something amazing in this world. They provide subscription food to babies. So you have a new baby, you're all excited, you want to make them eat well and healthy and on time. They help you get that ingredients and food in a subscription way. So it's a direct to consumer DTC subscription company operating mainly in the US. Mm-hmm. They are an amazing company with phenomenal results, growing very nicely, doing something meaningful in the world. And they have an analytics function. So they analyze the data and trying to see how can they best meet and fit their customers' needs to create a better experience, to optimize on their offering, to make their marketing more efficient. All of this is already being done by their analytics team. Comes Pecan, which, as I mentioned earlier, provides them with a capability that wasn't in their professional arsenal before. They weren't data scientists. They didn't do a PhD in statistics or anything like that. They're just intelligent, hardworking, strong data people. And working with the Pecan platform, they were able to build a couple of predictive models. As an example, a model that predicts churn or predicts which of their customer is going to not renew their subscription. They're very fortunate that this number is relatively low, but you want to basically mitigate even one customer churn. Obviously, the more you can mitigate, the better. So with us, they were able to very quickly, through our automation, when their capabilities, build an amazing predictive model that captured churn very early, much earlier than it actually took place, allowing them to find customer service and customer success ways of helping those customers not necessarily churn from the service. And the results, you can imagine, the business results are amazing. Again, without going into details, every company can only benefit from retaining those customers that were already acquired and you would hate to lose.
Such a great example, and so refreshing to hear a story like that, because I suspect for many people listening, they've heard a lot of stories of AI projects failing or even just caught in pilot phase and never making it into production. I'm curious, from what you've seen and what you've heard, what are the most common reasons for that, and how can leaders avoid some of those pitfalls? You've probably seen a lot of mistakes being made, but what are they doing wrong?
Oh man, the amount of mistakes being done in AI. I'm telling you, it's like, it's complex. I want to start from that. Implementing AI successfully is hard, and it's not something that is a double click on an icon and you're done. And any attempt to portray AI as such is problematic. The first thing you need to do when you want to implement AI, and I guarantee, Neil, 90% of execs trying to implement AI have not gone through that stage. The first stage is to ask yourself, what am I solving for? What do I want to solve? How am I going to measure success? Without even going into what type of AI, without going into what type of technology, without going into who's gonna work on it. Just what are you trying to solve? Because I'm telling you, in most cases, people come with a motivation of using AI and with very little understanding of what problems they're actually going to solve for. It's like you have a huge hammer and you're looking for a nail. No, I'm saying reverse it. Ask yourself, what are the nails you want to hit? Once you have that, you can find the relevant best hammer. Okay, that's issue number one. I'll mention only just one additional issue, and that is the issue of the right resources. So in many cases, people don't align internally on the right resources and on the project plan before they initiate the AI initiative. And what it creates, and we've seen it in many cases, we have a lot of business thanks to it, so we can't complain, but I do want people to be more cognizant of how it works. It means that somewhere down the road, while you're thinking of implementing AI and trying stuff, you'll find that there's detachment between the resources you assigned to the project and how the project evolves, because AI projects in most cases are interdisciplinary. You can't count on one specific subdomain within the organization to take the AI initiative end to end in most cases. It requires collaboration. You want to have someone from the data. You want to have someone from IT. You want to have someone from the business organization and the stakeholder that cares about the actual value that AI is going to deliver. And aligning those resources internally will guarantee, if you have a strong understanding of what are you trying to solve for, and you have alignment internally of the relevant resources across disciplines, your failure rate is going to decrease from 95% to 25%. Just by doing these two things.
That's incredible. I'm curious, looking ahead, how do you see predictive AI supporting everyday business functions, like a few things we mentioned today, from sales forecasting, churn reduction, or marketing optimization? What does the road ahead look like for predictive AI here? And do you think it will enter the mainstream of everyday business functions?
I don't think so. I know so. I predict so. Yeah. I would basically say, I can't think of a business in the near future that is operating without predictive AI in its core, because all of your business processes are trying to optimize a certain KPI or a certain measurement, if those processes were not reactive, but rather proactive, anticipating future events, they would just be better, full stop. Now, the same way that 20 years ago, businesses all of a sudden realized they need to do BI and do some form of data analytics and ask themselves, what has happened last quarter? Okay, based on these insights, I'm going to do something like that. The same way, the same exact way, they will have to move from just doing BI and looking at the rear view mirror into doing predictive AI, anticipating events and acting accordingly.
And if I was to ask you to take a peek behind the curtain of every enterprise in the world, what kind of mindset shift is needed, do you think, for those companies to start treating AI as less than just another shiny innovation or shiny tech or tool, and more like core infrastructure? Because that's where the magic happens. Everything's kind of high level now. We don't like to talk about the complex stuff, but it is core infrastructure here. What needs to change?
The best advice I can give CEOs or senior execs at larger organization, roll up data to the business units. I don't believe in horizontal data organizations in large organizations, not in smaller companies, because smaller companies are more manageable. Large organizations, it's fine to have some horizontal infrastructure and maintenance layer. In some respects, you have to have it. But the important aspects of data to business relationship has to be related to the business unit and the business function. Because what should drive data infrastructure is not IT questions. What should drive data strategy and infrastructure and approach is the business strategy. And you want to have each and every business unit and business stakeholder the flexibility to leverage the data the way they think they should be leveraging it. Because once they're confined to the way the horizontal data is being structured, they literally can't move. Full stop. And that's, to me, the biggest blocker when it comes to implementing predictive AI.
And if we were to look further ahead, let's say they overcome those challenges, how do you see things like no-code predictive platforms shaping that relationship between lean teams, AI, and enterprise-scale decision-making? Feels like there's a huge opportunity here, but how do you see this occurring?
I think there's a huge opportunity. I think it ties directly. So once you basically break down the monolithic data approach and you let data streamline and feed the business units themselves, every stakeholder can leverage the data immediately and start asking questions. At first, they might ask simple questions like, what's the region that I'm performing the best at? But the moment they want to become slightly more sophisticated, they'll be able to ask predictive questions where, which department store is going to face overstock, say next month, right? Just for a supply chain example, they'll be able to ask questions dynamically and feed their processes and perhaps change something in their planning and supply chain. Or someone from marketing could say, hey, how is this campaign, instead of how that campaign had performed, which is the regular question they're asking, how is this campaign going to perform? What's the predictive AI of that campaign? Now, if you know it's going to underperform in the future, you don't need to be an amazing marketer to kill the campaign. It becomes an easy decision. Spend your time building smart creative. Don't look at historical data to make a decision about the future of the campaign. So I think it would just become the way we interface with our day-to-day business decisions. We take the data, we ask a question about the future, we understand the answer, we modify, and then we ask something the next day.
It is so refreshing to hear you talk about this topic and so passionate about it as well. And before I let you go, one thing that I always like to ask of my guests is not only give the gift of their insights and experiences and everything that they're seeing and expertise, but also a book that means something to them that they'd recommend. We'll add to an Amazon wish list and people listening can check that book out. But what would you like to add and why?
So I'm a book lover. I'm a hard copy, bring me this paper type of a book reader. And I'm not a huge fan of flying and a huge fan of traveling all the time, but I'm in the line of work where I have to. So I get a chance to read whenever I travel, at least. And my personal affection lies with more philosophical readings when I can. I not always have the capacity to do it because you need to kind of be able to concentrate. And God knows I'm not sleeping enough. Long story short, when I want to read something slightly deeper on one of my trips, I'm usually going to thinkers I appreciate. One of them is Isaiah Berlin, which I think is a little bit underappreciated nowadays. He's one of the most amazing thinkers and writers I personally came across. And very recently, I'm still at the end of the book. I still have a couple of pages left. He has a book that is called The Sense of Reality. He has many. All of his books are extremely, extremely recommended. They have changed many aspects of how we think about thinking and how we think about history and how we think about science and stuff like that. But The Sense of Reality is very digestible. And one distinction I think he's making, which is extremely interesting in nowadays, it was written in the middle of the 20th century, maybe in the 70s or something like that. But these types of thinkers and these types of books are always universally relevant and super timely. So one of the things he speaks about in the book, which I think are timely as well here, is the way people should understand, at least. He's not giving any necessarily recommendations, but he's reflecting something he's been seeing in many cases, how thoughts could be very much on the continuum between super, call it emotional, irrational, and how some thoughts could be extremely logical and analytical, scientific. And how in many cases, the most interesting innovations, not necessarily technological innovations, he was talking more about conceptual innovations, but it's basically the same thing, how these innovations come when people are able to, in some non-trivial way, obviously, join those two streams into something coherent. So, to make a long story short, obviously I recommend reading it, but I just want to highlight that being able to kind of compromise those two extremes of emotional and rational thinking while thinking about innovation is quite extraordinary in my mind, the way he puts it, and very relevant for people who are trying to solve problems that are not solvable, for example, by asking ChatGPT how to solve the problem.
Wow, you've certainly got me sold on that. So I will be adding Sense of Reality to the Amazon wish list and also checking it out myself. But for everyone listening, wanting to find out more information about you and the great work you're doing at Pecan AI, where should they be going? What's the web address? Anywhere they should be reaching out to? Where would you like to send them?
So I recommend everyone to check us out in our website. It's pecan.ai, pecan like the nut, because AI is a hard nut to crack, .ai because .ai. And people are also more than welcome to follow me on LinkedIn. It's Zohar Bronfman or Zohar Pecan AI, and you'll probably find me in a minute.
Oh, brilliant, man. And my next question was going to be, what's the story behind the name? And I love that instant line there of AI is a hard nut to crack. Brilliant. And I think you've done a great job today in demystifying this space, and especially the opportunities around predictive AI as the much bigger opportunity out there that's possibly overlooked right now in the eyes of a lot of leadership teams. But hopefully we can change that. And just a big thank you for sharing your story today. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Neil. Thanks for having me.
So what sticks with you after this conversation? For me, it was predictive AI becomes meaningful when it answers a business question that you care about, and when the people who own that outcome have the tools to act on it. And Zohar's playbook here is refreshingly human. Start with a clear problem, measure success in plain numbers, and seat data, IT, and the business all at the same table. And that example of I think it was the Little Spoon story there, I think it reminds us that foresight beats hindsight every time, especially when retention or revenue is part of the conversation. But as we close the conversation today, I want you to ask yourself one thing that would be better if you could predict it a month ahead. And imagine what your team could change tomorrow if they had the answer to that today. Woo, so much food for thought there. Let me know your thoughts. techtalksnetwork.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Nice and easy to find, but keep your insights, your experiences coming over too. But just a big thank you to Zohar for starting this conversation today. But that's it. It's quitting time for me. I'm prepared for tomorrow's guest now, and I'll be back in your podcast feed with another guest. So see you all then. Bye for now.